The air in Manila is thick with smoke and fury. It's not just the haze from distant fires but the palpable tension that hangs over the city, as if the very atmosphere is charged with the weight of a nation's anger and heartbreak. On September 28, 2025, the city's streets are not clogged with traffic, but with a sea of protesters surging toward Malacanang Palace. The usual chaos of Manila's roads has been replaced by a different kind of energy, one that pulses with hope, frustration, and a desperate demand for change. Their signs scream betrayal, their chants demand accountability. The voices of thousands echo off the city's concrete walls, a chorus of outrage that refuses to be silenced. This is more than a protest. It's a national outcry. It's a moment when ordinary citizens, long ignored, have found their collective voice and are determined to be heard. A corruption scandal has torn open a deep wound in the Filipino people. The revelations have struck at the very core of public trust, exposing the rot that has festered beneath the surface for years. Billions meant for disaster protection have vanished into the pockets of the powerful. These were funds that could have saved lives, rebuilt homes, and protected families from the relentless typhoons that batter the archipelago year after year. The rage is raw, paralyzing the capital. It's a fury born not just of this scandal but of years of broken promises and dashed hopes. Trust has been shattered. The government stands accused of serving itself, not its people. The sense of betrayal runs deep, cutting across generations and social classes. Students, workers, and families unite, feeling cheated and abandoned. For many, this is the first time they have taken to the streets, compelled by a sense of duty to their country and to each other. The stolen funds were for flood control, a lifeline in a typhoon-battered nation. Every year, floods claim lives and livelihoods, and the knowledge that help was within reach but stolen away only deepens the pain. Instead, the money disappeared through ghost projects and fake companies. Promised bridges and dikes exist only on paper, while real communities are left exposed and vulnerable. The audacity of the theft has pushed the public over the edge. People are no longer willing to accept empty apologies or vague promises of reform. Police in riot gear form a tense barrier, but the crowd grows louder, fueled by righteous indignation. The standoff is more than physical, it's a battle for the soul of the nation. This is about more than money, it's about dignity and a system rigged against the ordinary citizen. It's about reclaiming a future that has been stolen, one broken promise at a time. The scandal has exposed decades of deep-rooted corruption. It's a painful reminder that the struggle for justice is not new, but this time, the outcry is impossible to ignore. But this time, the anger is more profound, the resolve more determined. There is a sense that something fundamental has shifted, that the people will not back down. The Filipino people are saying, enough is enough. Their voices ring out in unison, a powerful declaration that they will no longer tolerate injustice. The political atmosphere crackles with tension, impeachment whispers, calls for resignations. Every conversation, every news report is charged with uncertainty and the possibility of historic change. The president, once popular, now faces his greatest crisis. His words are scrutinized, his actions watched by millions who once believed in him. Every government statement is met with skepticism and scorn. The gap between leaders and the elite has never felt wider or more dangerous. As the sun sets over Manila, one question lingers. Can the nation heal from this betrayal? The city is quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath, waiting for an answer. The answer will shape the country's future. In the faces of the crowd, there is pain, but also hope. A hope that, together, they can build something better from the ashes of their anger. The scandal began quietly, with a single whistleblower stepping forward, risking everything to reveal the truth. Deep inside the Department of Public Works and Highways, a web of corruption was spun behind closed doors. Funds allocated for the National Flood Resilience Program, intended to build seawalls, dredge rivers, and improve drainage systems, were systematically siphoned off. Shell companies and ghost projects became the perfect cover for this elaborate theft, with paperwork forged and records manipulated to hide the truth. Determined investigative journalists followed the money trail, piecing together a complex network of fake contracts, non-existent construction, and shadowy business entities. Their relentless pursuit exposed how deep the deception ran. Billions of pesos meant to protect the most vulnerable communities simply evaporated, leaving behind empty construction sites and abandoned equipment. Outrage exploded across the country as citizens realized they'd been robbed by those sworn to protect them. The betrayal was personal. Every flooded home a reminder of broken promises. Senior officials colluded with favored contractors, inflating costs and approving payments for projects that never existed. Corruption became routine, with bribes exchanged in back rooms and deals made in secret. The Commission on Audit's repeated warnings were ignored, their reports buried under bureaucracy. Whistleblowers' voices were silenced and accountability was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, the lavish lifestyles of corrupt officials stood in stark contrast to the suffering of flood victims. Expensive cars, designer clothes, and extravagant parties became symbols of stolen hope. Social media amplified the fury. Photos of submerged homes appeared beside images of officials' extravagant celebrations. The stark contrast fueled public anger, making the injustice impossible to ignore. Hashtags like #FloodOfCorruption trended nationwide, fueling a digital tidal wave of anger and calls for justice. Online communities united, demanding accountability. Citizen journalists and ordinary people documented half-finished projects and shoddy construction, sharing their stories online and exposing the scale of the disaster. The stolen funds were not just numbers on a spreadsheet, they represented destroyed homes, shattered dreams, and families left to pick up the pieces after every storm. The flood of deceit was finally met by a flood of public outrage. Across the nation, people demanded answers, justice, and an end to the corruption that had cost them so much. The political fallout was swift. The Secretary of Public Works and Highways resigned, triggering a chain reaction. 2 more cabinet members, Budget and Management, and the Executive Secretary, stepped down under pressure. Their denials rang hollow. The administration was in disarray. The president's televised plea for calm failed to reassure a skeptical public. Impeachment complaints flooded Congress, deepening the crisis. The government was paralyzed, focused on damage control instead of governance. Each new revelation revealed deeper rot at the highest levels. Key cabinet positions sat empty, leadership credibility was in tatters, policy decisions stalled, and the machinery of state ground to a halt. The nation drifted, leaderless, as political chaos reigned. At this moment of weakness, a greater threat loomed just beyond the horizon. The country's vulnerability was exposed. Corruption is a cancer, and nowhere is it more dangerous than in the military. When those entrusted with the nation's defense betray their oath for personal gain, the consequences ripple far beyond the barracks and battlefields. The armed forces of the Philippines, meant to defend the nation and uphold its sovereignty, have been hollowed out by years of plundered defense budgets and mismanaged resources. Instead of building a strong and modern force, corruption has left the military struggling to keep up with the demands of national security. Funds intended for modernization, training, and new equipment have been siphoned away by corrupt officials, leaving soldiers with outdated ships, malfunctioning weapons, and vehicles that belong in a museum rather than on the front lines. Every peso stolen from public works and defense contracts is a peso lost for national defense. This theft doesn't just weaken the military, it undermines the entire nation's ability to protect itself. Modernization programs stall, and soldiers are forced to patrol the West Philippine Sea in aging, unreliable vessels, risking their lives with every mission. Corruption erodes morale. When soldiers see their leaders living in luxury while they struggle with poor equipment and low pay, trust collapses. The sense of duty and pride that should unite the ranks is replaced by suspicion and resentment. The result is a demoralized force, vulnerable to both internal decay and external threats. When morale is low, readiness and effectiveness suffer. In the West Philippine Sea, the Navy and Coast Guard are consistently outmatched by China's growing and modernizing fleet, making it difficult to assert the country's territorial rights. Fewer patrols mean vast stretches of the nation's waters go unguarded, leaving the door open for illegal activities and encroachment by foreign powers. Foreign vessels exploit these gaps, fishing, exploring, and even building structures with impunity, knowing there is little resistance. The hollow shield of the armed forces is now a national security crisis, exposing the country to greater risks and diminishing its standing on the world stage. The country's sovereignty and future are at risk, and unless corruption is rooted out, the Philippines will remain vulnerable in an increasingly dangerous world. As Manila reels from scandal, the West Philippine Sea grows more perilous. China seizes the moment, escalating its campaign to dominate contested waters. Chinese Coast Guard vessels use water cannons to block Philippine supply boats, leaving Marines stranded. Maritime militia swarms Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys, intimidating Filipino fishermen and shadowing patrols. These actions, just short of war, are calculated to squeeze the Philippines out of its own waters. China announces new names for features within the Philippine EEZ, rewriting geography to its advantage. Beijing ignores the 2016 arbitral ruling, enforcing its claims with force. Each unanswered act emboldens China further. The West Philippine Sea is a vital economic lifeline, rich in fish, oil, and gas. Surrendering these waters means surrendering the nation's future. The dragon is at the door, and the house is in disarray. Domestic chaos breeds external vulnerability. The corruption scandal has fractured Philippine society, creating chaos and distrust. China exploits these divisions, knowing a distracted nation cannot defend its sovereignty. The government is consumed by crisis, neglecting national security. Strategic paralysis sets in. Leaders focus on survival, not defense. Allies watch with concern, questioning the Philippines' reliability. Instability erodes trust, making military aid and support uncertain. National unity is shattered. Many citizens distrust their own government as much as China. The will to defend a corrupt state weakens. Internal chaos is the perfect Trojan horse for external aggression. The nation's defenses are crumbling from within. The political crisis has shaken the economy. The stock market plunges. Foreign investors flee. Instability freezes new investments and threatens recent economic gains. The peso weakens, imports become costlier, and inflation rises. Ordinary Filipinos feel the pain as prices soar. The government's credibility to manage the economy is in tatters. Credit rating agencies warn of downgrades, making borrowing more expensive. Corruption's economic cost is real, crippling growth and development. The country's reputation as a place to do business is damaged. The economic aftershocks will last long after the political dust settles. Amid the protests, a clear message emerges. The people want reform, not revolution. Civic groups, students, and business leaders demand accountability and transparency. They call for an independent truth commission and swift prosecution of all involved. Systemic reforms, stronger oversight, new transparency laws are on the agenda. Even some lawmakers join the push, forming a coalition for accountability. The movement is methodical, focused on building resilient institutions. Reform-minded leaders bridge the gap between public anger and government action. The call for reform transcends partisan lines, showing democracy's maturity. The people channel their anger into a constructive movement for good governance. They demand leaders worthy of their trust. This collective voice offers hope for healing and renewal. The path forward is clear but difficult. Restore public trust. This is essential for stability, security, and sovereignty. The government must pursue corruption cases with transparency and vigor. No sacred cows. Deep reforms are needed. Stronger oversight, whistleblower protection, a culture of integrity. Only with good governance can the Philippines build a credible defense. Transparent budgets will ensure military modernization funds are used properly. A corruption-free military will boost morale and readiness. Restored trust will strengthen diplomatic ties and alliances. The stakes are immense: sovereignty, security, and democracy itself. The Filipino people's call for reform is a testament to their resilience. The nation's leaders must act decisively to secure the country's future.